This is a fun, budget, low-profile mechanical keyboard for the masses. It's not going to be the same top-of-the-line experience that you get from something like Newfie's Air 75 V3. However, if you're looking for a keyboard that is simple to use, sounds pretty good, and which checks nearly all the boxes, let me introduce you to the $75 Kzzi i75 V2. Now, Kzzi did send this keyboard over to me for review, but had no say in how I covered it. There's affiliate links in the video description if you decide you want one, and they were generous enough to offer code Cameron to save 5% on your Kzzi store order. So now, let's jump into the details. To start, this is a V2 keyboard, but I have not personally used the V1, so I am coming into this a bit fresh. I did do a deep dive on the website though to figure out what changed between the V1 and the V2. The biggest things that I could identify are the addition of a gray color, a change from using Kale switches to Kzzi's own switch made by a company called Kzzi, and probably the biggest change is the addition of shine through to the keycaps. Plus, it's now actually $10 cheaper, which is a rarity on a V2 product these days. Now on to build and design. This is a 75% keyboard with a knob and some added spacing around the edges of the keyboard. That spacing may help you to locate some of the keys by touch. I find it particularly helpful around the arrow keys, or you might feel like it's just a bit of a waste of space. Around the function keys in particular, there is a lot of spacing, much more in line with what you might expect to see on a traditional full-size keyboard. This is helpful if you're transitioning from a board like that, but it could be a challenge if you use the function row a lot and are used to the positioning on a laptop or on another 75% compact board. For dimensions, this is definitely a low-profile keyboard, but it's not ultra small or super space-saving. In particular, the spacing at the top around those function keys that we just talked about, along with the extended forehead above those keys, makes this a rather long keyboard from top to bottom. However, even though it's on the big side for this form factor, it's still fairly light, weighing in at 712 grams or about 1.57 pounds. Most of that weight savings comes from the materials. This keyboard is primarily made of ABS plastic with a strip of aluminum around the middle. The aluminum accents adds a nice look and a bit of a premium feel to the place where you're most likely to handle the board when you move it around. On the bottom, there is a bit of a bulge towards the top, which holds the battery, and it also has a slot for the USB receiver. Plus, there are two-stage adjustable feet, which get to typing angles of 4, 6, and 8 degrees, which is a nice variety of agreeable typing angles for most people. Overall, though the materials aren't the most premium, the construction does feel quite good, especially for the price. My model here is the white version, which is clean and simple. There's also a pink model and a new gray version, which replaces the black option that was available on the V1. Moving on to the typing experience, we'll begin with the keycaps, which have a great size and shape. They have a good flat typing area with a slight concave shape to help guide your fingers. They are made of doubleshot ABS plastic, which is a cheaper material than PBT, which is used on some higher end boards. That does mean that these keycaps will show wear and shine more quickly than some more premium boards will. The good thing though is that this new V2 board has incorporated shine through to the keycaps, allowing you to appreciate the RGB backlighting that sits below. The keys also have icons to help show where the relevant keys are for things like multi-device pairing or switching between operating systems. This is excellent for a beginner or really for anyone who doesn't want to have to refer to a manual when they need to make a change. They just want to be able to look down at the actual keyboard to figure out which keys to press. The trade-off is that the board's design is a bit busier to look at, not as crisp and clean a look as some people may expect. Beneath the keycaps, you don't get a choice of switches. The board comes with the Kzzi White Snow switches, a super light linear switch made by a manufacturer called Kzzi, not a name I'm familiar with. Interestingly, the V1 used Kale switches, which is one of the most popular brands in low-profile switches. But maybe they were too expensive, so they moved to this smaller manufacturer to cut some costs. That might help to explain the $10 price decrease on the V2. The switches are technically hot swappable, but the website calls out that they're not compatible with switches from other brands, and indeed the pin layout does not match with Kale, Gateron, or any other switch that I had in the studio. This could come in handy if you have a switch fail, allowing you to make a fix without any special tools and limiting the chance that you're going to have to throw this entire board out. but it does mean that you're very limited to what types of customization you have available to you. For the internals, the V2 adopts the same series of sound-absorbing pads and foams, with only some slight tweaks made to accommodate the new switches and to fix a prior issue where removing switches apparently had the potential to cause some damage. Despite not being gasket mounted, there is a good amount of give when pressing on this keyboard. I believe that the bulk of that comes from the rubber feet on the bottom, which have a good amount of cushion and flex to them, resulting in a decent sound and feel. Let's give it a try and see how it sounds. Overall, the typing is actually pretty good. The key presses are very light, which won't be for everyone, but surprisingly, the board does not feel super hollow to me. The sounds are good with a pretty satisfying clacky sound to them, though there are some slight pings on individual keys and a bit of rattling in the stabilizers, especially on the spacebar. That being said, for 75 bucks, I like it as a value typing experience. For the rest of the functionality and features, there are some pretty solid north-facing RGB backlights under those shine-through keycaps. The backlighting gets really bright. Now, I test my keyboards with a desk that has a light bar on it, and I usually have to test the RGB away from that light bar because it will outshine most backlighting, but not here. This keyboard was bright enough to show through in even that extreme circumstance. Additionally, when there are shine-through keycaps on a board that I'm testing, I would typically refer to light bleed that comes from around the keycaps as a bit of a problem. But here, when it happens, it's actually kind of a feature in my opinion. The top plate on the keyboard is clear. I think it's polycarbonate, but they don't really specify. When the backlighting is on, it actually acts as a bit of a diffuser, which is why these multicolored lighting effects look particularly mesmerizing on this keyboard, which adds to it being a pretty fun experience overall. The knob on the top right is decent. It controls volume by default with a click to mute. You can also press and hold on the switch to change it to an RGB backlight control. It has some tactile feedback when you turn it, but it's not a crisp motion. It's a bit mushy. But what it does have going for it is precision. I can get to every level of a Mac volume bar with it, which is more than I can say for some knobs on way more expensive keyboards. For connectivity, there is a switch on the back to jump between wired 2.4 gig and Bluetooth modes. For Bluetooth, you can connect to 3 different devices and jump between them with function plus Q, W, and E, all nicely labeled on the keycaps. The 2.4 gig USB receiver is stored on the back with a nice little magnetic slot. Finally, the wired mode uses the USB-C port on the back and can optionally use the included basic 1.75 meter USB-A to C cable. Polling rates, which is the frequency with which the keyboard talks to your computer, are 1000 Hz for wired mode, 500 Hz for the USB receiver, and 125 Hz on Bluetooth. These are pretty good numbers, but it means that you probably want to plug it in if possible for any gaming sessions when using this keyboard. The keyboard works with Mac and Windows, and you can toggle between them with function plus A for Windows and function plus S for Mac. Once again, labeled, which is so nice. The keycaps at the bottom of the board have markings for both Mac and Windows, with the Windows ones being the primary with the shine through, and the Mac ones being slightly smaller and printed on the bottom. The function row has slightly different operations for Mac and Windows, with some keys showing 2 different small icons at the bottom to represent each one. Additionally, the function row as a whole defaults to media controls on Mac, requiring the use of the function button to use regular F1, F2, etc. On Windows, it's the exact opposite of that, requiring the function button to use the media controls. So depending on which one you prefer and which operating system you're on, that may be a benefit or a problem. For customization, there is a Kzzi proprietary software program available, however it is Windows only. There is also onboard storage for any changes, so you can make adjustments on Windows and then carry them over to Mac if you have one of each available to you. This would include changes to the little key at the top of the board, which shows and hides your desktop by default, but is described as a shortcut key, which is meant to be customized in their software. While I do have a Windows machine available to me, I did not test the Kzzi software as it is hosted on Google Drive when you go to download it. I took this stance with other brands, and I'm going to stick to it here. I personally would not trust an executable file downloaded from Google Drive, even when it is linked from a keyboard maker's website. There's just too much risk there for me personally. Finally, the onboard battery is 3,750 milliamp hours and is capable of 400 hours of use with backlighting off, but just 25 hours with backlighting on the highest setting. That's pretty low with backlighting, so you may want to use this keyboard wired if you want to have that backlighting on all the time. In terms of overall battery life though, 400 hours is not bad at all. For most people, this should work just fine. Also, if you want to check the battery life, you can use function plus enter to light up the number row for the battery life. For example, if 9 lights are lit, then your battery is around 90%. Quite handy, but strangely, this is one of the few things that isn't labeled directly on the keycaps. I don't know why. This keyboard has an MSRP of $75, which is $10 less than the original V1. As we talked about, my assumption is that the bulk of the cost savings there came from utilizing those cheaper switches. However, the typing experience doesn't seem to be completely ruined as a result, which is great. Now, if you're looking for a nice, low-profile 75% keyboard with a knob, and you want to spend as little as possible, this is a solid option. At the time I'm filming, there is even a sale going on, allowing you to get this keyboard even cheaper. When there's no other discounts running, remember that code Cameron will save you 5% on Kzzi's website, and supporting the channel through using the affiliate links in the video description are always appreciated. Now for the differentiators and deal breakers, I have to start with this clean design in simple, solid colors. This is going to be agreeable for the vast majority of folks out there. The backlighting is excellent, and the addition of shine-through keycaps on this V2 is a big plus. The knob actually works well, which is great. The pricing is totally reasonable and is downright cheap for a low-profile mechanical board. Battery life is good, especially with the backlighting off, though it does struggle a bit when the backlighting is on full blast. Finally, the typing is pretty good, especially for the price. On the flip side, the typing is imperfect, with some pinging and rattling that you'll notice if you're picky or if you've got sensitive ears. The size is pretty big for a low-profile keyboard. The hot swappable switches don't have any options when you purchase, and they aren't compatible with any other brands, so your options are limited, especially compared to the V1's compatibility with other Kale switches. And finally, the software is Windows only and is hosted on Google Drive rather than directly through their website, which is why I didn't test it. This keyboard isn't perfect, but no keyboard is. For $75, this has a lot going for it, and it would be perfect for a student or a young professional, or just for anyone who wants a keyboard that's easy to use and fun to type on. If you have more room in your budget, check out something like the Newfie Air 75 V3, which is absolutely more premium, but at nearly double the price. Is it really that much better? I don't know. In terms of value, this has pretty much everything you need, so if you'd like to save some money, consider this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.